This is like the old days when we're doing this. I took like some with Nick doing it about what 2 hours, 3 hours before we get
Yeah.
started. Yeah, and he would just get so frustrated.
And then we would still record for 2 hours when we said only 1 hour.
Yes, and he'd argue it the whole time. So like
Exactly. That was
yeah, so with
why.
Nick doing oh turn that down, Gerald. Battlefield 1. Hey, another shooter.
There we go.
There you go.
Talk about good shooters that don't have every faction of the war inside of a war game.
Well, but it's still, I'm hey, it's a different thing for EA, and you know what? Different is sometimes better, and I appreciate them doing it. Instead of just being like going the way of Call of Duty and trying to be the Call of Duty. Maybe it's
Heck, even Battlefield was doing that. Battlefield 3 to 4, it was going, 20 years further in the
like
future, and they're like,
going the way of Call of
we're
Duty and trying
following
to be
Call of
the
Duty here.
Call of Duty.
Yeah.
Maybe it's
Heck,
Was
even
it Call of
Battlefield
Duty
was doing
Infinite
that.
or Call of
Battlefield
Duty
3 to
Halo? I
4,
was
it
having
was
a hard
going,
time
20 years further in the
between
future, and
them.
they're like,
going the way of Call of Duty
we're
and trying to
following
be
Halo
the
Infinite
Call of
Warfare.
Duty. Maybe it's
Heck,
Was
even
it Call of
Battlefield
Duty
was doing
Infinite
that.
or Call of
Battlefield
Duty
3 to
Halo? I
4,
was
it
having a
was
hard
going,
time
20 years further in the
between
future, and
them.
they're like,
going the way of Call of Duty
we're
and trying
following
to be
Halo Infinite.
Okay, it looks like it's good. I can hear all three of us then.
All right,
All right, let's get this shindig going.
Shindig.
All right, I know, old man talking, but I was actually interviewing someone that was, in my realm as far as age is concerned. We were talking 70s and 80s music, but that being the case, and we're back once again for another edition of the Pop Culture Cosmos. This is Gerald Glassford from Pop Culture Cosmos and Game Source. You can catch us each week, Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific on the Podcast Radio Network. And also, if you can't catch us there, please try to catch us on one of our numerous audio outlets, the ESO Network, esonetwork.com. A lot of great programs there as well, along with Podcast Radio Network. They've got a lot of great shows. Check them out. The Tangent Bound Network also has a lot of great shows, including Pop Culture Cosmos, and we are very appreciative of being on that show, that network as well. And also, if you can't catch us there, or if you just want to download the show at your leisure, it always appears on the Pop Culture Cosmos iTunes channels, Stitcher, Google Play, and podcast.com. And of course, our home site, popculturecosmos.wordpress.com, has our last three episodes. Plus, it also has Wine, Women, and Words. It also has the Ghost Toaster saga. As far as that, from our good friend that's going to be here on the show in a second. Also, as well, it has Gamercast with Jay, Rob, and Glenn, and The Trenches with Rob interviewing some of the leaders out there and most creative people out there that he can find. Some great stuff out there, plus some great articles that we do. Josh, myself, Michelle, and Diana have done some. We've done some our best in trying to bring you the world as we see it, as far as some great articles and also some great podcasting and videos out there. And I got a little bit of announcement to make as well. We also want to welcome our latest addition to one of our audio outlets, and as well as far as a way that you can also catch us. It's Gonna Geek, and you want to check out all the great programming that they have on GonnaGeek.com. We are truly, truly thankful and blessed to be a part of that network now. Just wanted to go ahead and give that a shout out to GonnaGeek.com. Catch their great lineup of shows there. So once again, it's Pop Culture Cosmos. I'm Gerald Glassford from Pop Culture Cosmos and Game Source, and I'm here today with the author of Vendetta Dark. He is the man, the myth, the legend, the director of the Ghost Toaster saga, the aforementioned Ghost Toaster saga, and also the creator of Center Space and the upcoming Congratulations, You Suck. It's Josh Peterson.
Hey guys, it's good to be back.
Yes, a little bit later than what we anticipated, but hey, we're on the air and it's great to be here. And I've got a returning member to the program. This gentleman here has been with Game Source since I want to say 2010, 2011. since the fourth episode out there, and we're now over 153 on there. So he's been with Game Source quite a while. From a hiatus from earlier this year, it's our good friend, the man in the know when it comes to the Gears franchise. Although Josh may dispute that as well. It's Chris Bonner. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing good. Thank you, Gerald. Thank you for having me back on.
What was your tagline?
Well, which one?
What do you usually do as an intro?
God, it's been so long, honestly.
I play it on every Game Source podcast. It's something to do with the world.
It's just hello world.
No, what's up, world?
What's up, world? God, it has been so long, man. I'm honestly, I'm baffled that I didn't even remember that. What's up, world?
What's up, world? Indeed.
Tell me how long it's been since I've been on a show with you. It's now instead I'm just like, "What's up, noobs?" when I'm online.
There you go. Well, Killer X Wolf, indeed. So it came to pass that you and I had a conversation recently, because that's how I got you back on the program, because you were telling me your availability and whatnot. And this is something that leads me into something that Josh, as the man in the know regarding comic books, can assist as well. Chris and I met and saw each other and talked at an unusual place and unusual time. Maybe not so unusual for Pop Culture Cosmos, but it was at a comic book store. But it was at 5:30 in the morning on Black Friday. And the reason why we were there was obviously to get great deals and whatnot at our good friends at Cosmic Comics in Las Vegas, Nevada here. But there was needless to say, getting up at, X amount in the morning and trying to drive over there just to try and get some great deals on some lower priced comics is something that we were looking forward to. For me, trying to get something for my girls, I wanted to get a lot of stuff for my girls. And I know you had some things that you wanted to target as well. But Josh, I wanted to talk to you about as far as the memories that a lot of comic book fans have in regards to going to the market store, going to the local liquor store, local convenience store, what have you. I'm sorry, I said liquor store. That dates me even more. But the quarter comics, the dollar comics, the cheap comics in the day, for the most part, unless you're at a Black Friday and you're looking for those type of deals, seem to be gone by the wayside. And I wanted to ask you, Josh, Chris and I were there trying to 5:30 in the morning to get some really our hands on some really good deals for the comic book scene. What about the comic landscape these days? Is it becoming too expensive for people to afford to be involved in comic books?
Yeah, I don't actually remember a time when they were below $3. When I first started collecting, they were $3, and then they eventually moved up to like $4 or $5. But I think that we have shows. It's shows like Walking Dead, Big Bang Theory, and Marvel, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, obviously, that's making comic books more popular now, and people obviously they've caught on to the fact that people are now buying comic books, so they want to make more money off of them. That's just my theory, at least.
Chris, I mean, when we were there talking about it, in the midst of people just like diving through everything, almost like jumping into the comic book areas themselves, fending off others for that, much beloved issues they've been so longing to get. My concern is that the comic book industry is going to become out of reach for the average consumer. Do you share those same thoughts, or do you see maybe some light at the end of the tunnel?
Well, the weird thing with it is because I was there much earlier than you. I arrived there probably around 4-ish when we met at 5:30, and seeing the people that were there, they were definitely dedicated to getting comics, regardless of sales or not. These are fans of the comic book store, the comic book environment, and that's what they wanted to see and get. Those are obviously the people that are not going to let this culture die. However, for the Commonwealth, for the regulars that want to come in and start getting into comic books and start getting into that environment, it is kind of a costly thing to start with now. To start with one comic at $5, 10 comics at $50. It starts adding up quite a bit. At the same price, you would they'll buy a video game, and people do that casually, spend $60 a month on video games. It really just depends on how these guys want to go about it. If Marvel really wants to push all their series at once, then they can get people to buy all the Batman, and then, or not Batman, Spider-Man, then X-Men, then all the other ones throughout Marvel, all at one time. Then it's going to cost them a bunch of money, or cost the consumer a bunch of money. I just feel like if they want to get a lot of people in, it's going up in price way too much, regardless of how much these shows like Big Bang Theory are advertising it, and then of course all these other Marvel cinematics and everything else that, like Josh was saying, they are pushing, and they are going to show
I noticed that
the comic books
around the same time.
do provide more story, but a lot of people won't be able to afford that, and that's the shameful thing, is that they can't get to the common people because of their prices.
By the way, I had to tell my girls that you weren't wearing a robe. Josh, because they were like, "What is Chris wearing? What is Chris wearing?" And I was saying, "No, he's not wearing a robe."
Hey, if you're gonna be Black Friday shopping, you gotta be comfy.
Yes, indeed. Well, I realized, because they were doing a promotion at Cosmic Comics for the first 50 people. I thought it was the first 100. Silly me.
Same here.
It was, you get 100 free all ages comics. Okay, which is a great promotion. Is that the first 50 people got 100 all ages comics, which I desperately wanted to get my daughters, because they're interested in comic books. They want to be a part of the comic book scene. I've gone on record to telling both you guys how big of fans they are of the Marvel universe, and they're getting into the DC universe a little bit and whatnot. But I have to look for deals like that, just so that they can have those same memories that you had when you were young, Josh, and you had when you were young, Chris, and even I had when I was young. As not an ardent comic book fan, but I did get comic books, and I did read comic books, and I knew how much affordable that they could be as a form of entertainment. Josh, do you see somehow that the industry can try and make it more approachable? I know that they do free comic book days, but is that really and I know they get large crowds because of it, but does it really attract a new audience for these? Do these free comic books, which basically are glorified samplers, to be quite honest with you. I mean, I get them every year, but they're, you and I both know that they're not an actual comic book, as far as that tells you a whole complete story, or at least a good part of one. Do you see a point where the comic book industry maybe should take notice on where the direction is headed?
Oh yeah, I see a point, but I mean, whether or not they're going to do anything about it, that's another question in itself. Personally, like if I had never collected comic books before, and I were to go to a comic book store and look for some comics, especially like since I got comic book OCD where I have to read from the first issue, I can't just jump into a series. So naturally, I'm going to want, if it's like the third issue, I'm going to want to buy, 1, 2, and 3. And that could add up to like $15. So if I were a new fan, that I could go to like Barnes & Noble and I could pick up a book that would probably last me longer than 60 pages of comic books. It's
like
kind of
Vendetta Dark. That's
like Vendetta Dark, exactly.
267
on
pages.
Amazon.
Yeah, $14.99 on Amazon, 267 pages. How did I know that? Well, I was on the ESO podcast the other day and mentioned it as a great holiday gift. So
I appreciate that. But yeah, I mean, it's just, I wouldn't, as a new comic fan, like if I were to jump on right now, it would just be way too expensive for me, especially like, most people under the age of 30, like they don't have money to go out and just spend it on random things. Like they have to really want it. So can they justify spending, $5 to, especially if you're going to buy multiple comics, so it's anywhere from like $5 to $40, can they justify spending that if it's going to cost so much?
Now, one of the things I wanted to mention to you guys, and I'll start off with Chris, is as far as also on that ESO podcast as a holiday gift, I mentioned probably because I was a little bit perturbed about what I had to do to get cheap comics for my girls, was go and look into another way to get comic books or for them to read comic books. And I noticed one of the ways that they could possibly do it is getting a subscription to Marvel Unlimited, less per se, but that only gives you one realm of the universe. Mind you, there's 17,000 plus digital comics that are available at their fingertips if you do get a subscription. But it is available for as low as $60 a year if you use their code STRANGE, just to let anybody out there, obviously to tie into the the recent movie and whatnot. So Strange will get you a $60 subscription to Marvel Unlimited. Do you see this as the wave of the future for comic books, and that it will become less reliant on the hardcover, tangible, fold it, open it, but you really don't want to read it too much so you can get it all messed up as far as you got to keep it in the plastic type deal?
I mean, that also depends on who's going to be, going about it. The people that have, if you have an Action Comics, number one, you're probably have either never read it or, don't want to read it because it's worth thousands to tens of thousands of dollars. But those are the people that want the hard comics that are going to be valuable later or that they can hand down to their kids, that kind of stuff without any problem. And that's a great thing. It's a, tradition. When your dad hands you down his tools, because he used to fix the house or the car with, and you get his tools now, you hand them down to your kids. It's the same thing. It's a comic book that, gave you inspiration in your life as a child. So you want it to go down to your kids. Now, though, digital is what everyone's going to. You have digital books for school. You have digital homework that kids are doing nowadays. Why not just get their entertainment digitally as well, such as comics? It's a very cheap, very affordable way to get every comic out there. Like you said, $60 a year, that's $5 a month. I mean, $5 a month. So, I mean, you're going to be, I'd probably say, saving about 90% on just doing it digitally, but without ever being able to hold something in your hand saying, hey, I've had this. You could just enjoy the experience and say, hey, I've read this, I know this story, almost like watching a movie. I've read it all, but you have no proof of it.
And I understand the tangibility factors. I'm not trying to say it's negative, but with the rising costs of the comic book industry, it's just harder for the average individual to say they want to get invested and have those romantic stories that you guys had, that I had as a youth, as far as it's concerned. And like you said about the hand-me-downs from one parent to a child and whatnot. So we may not have those in the future, those type of memories for our children to pass on to, and the comic book industry as a whole may suffer. Now, Josh, I ask you, I know you may not be fond of what I said regarding the digital platform, but is it something that you could see more people going to over the course of time?
Yeah, it's definitely a cheaper alternative, but like like you guys are saying, you lose the tangibility. And my experience with comic book collectors is that there's two kinds. There's one that reads comic books for the story, and there's the second kind is the one that picks up comic books to collect them. So you're losing all the collectability of comic books. All the issues that are worth money, you're gonna lose them all, because who's gonna pay for Action Comics 1, who's going to pay all that money for a digital copy of it when I could just, go pick up your iPad and airdrop it to myself? Like, what's the point? So you're losing all the people like you guys waiting outside on Black Friday. You're going to lose that crowd. You're going to lose the people who like to have the variant covers, like the sketch covers, all the like the autographs. If the booths at Comic-Con are just going to be empty now because all the boxes they have filled with comic books, it's going to be gone. No, it's going to be a totally completely different landscape for comic book collectors.
And I understand indeed, but not many people are going to, a lot of people are going to have to make that choice if they want to stay within the comic book realms, because, as comic books tell such a vivid story when they're done right, when they're done, to the satisfaction of the fans out there, there can be no better way to tell a story than through a comic book because, yes, obviously reading a book like Vendetta Dark, available at $14.99 on Amazon today or on $4.99 on Kindle, for as far as that's concerned, you could read through it and you could use your imagination and whatnot, but sometimes reading a comic book, you not only can read what's going on, but that imagination comes to life in the form of imagery and whatnot that sometimes when it's well done, it's really hard to place and leaves a lasting imprint. Chris, I mean, before we head on to another subject, your thoughts on maybe some alternatives for people that might be out there as far as for those that would like to stay within the comic book realm and like to understand it a whole lot better.
I mean, one solution, maybe, buy an iPad, pay $60 a year using the code STRANGE to get a Marvel, whole Ultimate Universe, go to Comic-Con and have Stan Lee sign it, then sell that iPad. That's all I can say. If you want to try to make some money off of it, but that's if they want to use it for the collectability part. Other than that, you have to choose one way or another. You got the fans that are always going to be dedicated and always going to Comic-Con or to these free events, free comic book stores, or free comic book days at the stores. And those people are never going to die until they actually stop giving out all those incentives, or stop giving out variant covers or anything like that you can physically have, or autographs. But I think the way of digital is definitely a way to go if you're looking to save some money but still enjoy the story.
Well, indeed, I know that's a good way to look at it, and I know Josh had his thoughts, and he was going to interject with some of it on his own. So before we head to a break, Josh, your final thoughts on what people can do and maybe some alternatives they can look at as far as the comic book scene.
Indie publishers. Indie publishers are where it's at. Because honestly, how many times have we read the same exact retelling of a Spider-Man story or a Batman story or Superman or just X-Men? We don't even have enough fingers to count how many times we've read the same story, the same rehashing, the same villain, the same retelling. So indie publishers are where it's at. If you want to really make the big guys realize what a mistake they're making by making comic books so expensive, pick up an indie comic. What Gerard Way from former singer My Chemical Romance has Umbrella Academy, and it's a fantastic comic book, and it's it's a lot cheaper than your typical Spider-Man. Just any indie thing. You can go online and look at what the best indie comics are, and you'll pay significantly less for them than you would a big name title like Batman or Spider-Man, etc.
That's a great suggestion indeed as well. So we want to hear everyone out there, your thoughts as far as regarding comic books as a whole. Do you think comic books are becoming too expensive, and do you see the comic book industry suffering for it long term? We want to hear your thoughts on our Facebook page, Pop Culture Cosmos, and also at Pop Culture Cosmos on Twitter, or email us popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. You said something, Chris, about Claudio? Oh.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, from Coheed and Cambria, Claudio creates comics based around his songs as well. So all indie, and he does it all himself, coloring, story, all of that. But very, very good telling, especially if you love the songs. They kind of fit perfectly if you read them and listen to the music at the same time.
There you go. And then Josh was also mentioning Armory Wars as well, so as a good alternative. So people need to look into that as far as if they are concerned about the rising cost of comic books, because not getting up at 5:30 in the morning, doing it once in a while obviously for a Black Friday is fine for a great sale, but if people have to go and start doing that on a regular basis in order to get the same type of value on comics, that their predecessors did, that their parents did, that they did when they were young, then down the road their children won't be able to, unfortunately, be able to experience those same types of great things from the comic book industry. When we come back, it's going to be us talking about the Gears of War franchise, and I'm going to have the two biggest fans I still am able to talk to regarding the Gears series coming up right after break. This is the Pop Culture Cosmos. And we're back. It's the Pop Culture Cosmos. This is Gerald from Pop Culture Cosmos and Game Source. How's everyone doing out there? I'm here along with my good friends Chris Bonner and also as well Josh Peterson. We're here today talking now about the Gears of War franchise. But before we do, want to make sure that out there everybody knows that all the entities which help make up the Pop Culture Cosmos, starting with the Wine, Women, and Words podcast, available now on YouTube. Diana and Michelle do a great job as far as trying to put a great product out there and a great podcast on the literary world. Also want to give big shout out to our home site, Retro City Games. Follow Retro City Games on Facebook. They are the leaders. They are the leaders in video gaming in Southern Nevada. So you want to check them out, Retro City Games on Facebook. RobMcCallumFilms.com. That's RobMcCallumFilms.com for everything as far as what Rob McCallum, director of Nintendo Quest, the hit documentary, and also the award-winning for this year, Missing Mom. You want to check out all the projects he's doing, from Box Art, the docuseries, the Kitty documentary, also as well the He-Man documentary he's involved with, and all the other great stuff he's got going down the line. Check it out today, RobMcCallumFilms.com, where it also has information on his two podcasts that he's also part of, along with this one, The Trenches and Gamercast with Rob, Jay, and Glenn. And our good friends, Mario Party Wars, those crazy kids from UNLV, Mario Party Wars, dealing with nothing but Mario Party and board gaming. So if you're interested in both of those and want to check out, plus they do some great live Twitch broadcasting on their channel, check it out, Mario Party Wars on Facebook, and give them a shout out from there. And Game Source, the leader as far as the reason where it all started, where Chris first joined up with us, and also Josh as well. Game Source, the leader in the video game industry as far as the news sharing and as far as taking a look and understanding the business and industry that is the video games industry. We share thousands and thousands of articles and relevant items in the video game industry each and every year on our Facebook page and also on Twitter. That is Game Source on Facebook and at Game Source on Twitter. So am I forgetting anybody? No, I think that's it. All right, sweet. Now that the other two guys have fallen asleep, let's get back into conversation here. If only they could see you guys. But thanks to Hangouts, unfortunately, they cannot. We're going to talk a little bit about Gears of War this time. And Gears of War 4 has come out with very solid reviews, including Josh that has provided his own review on our site, popculturecosmos.wordpress.com. Gave it a very solid rating. To find out exactly what it is, you'll have to go there. But the series as a whole looks like it's in pretty good shape now. Came out to solid reviews, very good sales. Obviously, they use it as a major bundling tool for some of their Xbox Ones. And my question to you, and I'm gonna start with you, Josh, because you actually did the article and the review on Gears of War 4. Where do you think the Gears of War franchise is going to go from here, and do you see it maintaining that same level of success?
Oh, absolutely. The thing that I love about it is that I don't know where it's going to go from here. I think that they'll kind of pull we talked about this before, they'll probably pull kind of like a Star Wars type vibe, kind of handing the torch to a younger generation. The whole thing, I don't want to spoil it for anyone that hasn't played it yet, but the whole thing with them bringing the Locust back, it's interesting in the fact that the kids have heard the stories from their parents, like Marcus's son, obviously has heard about his war exploits, but now they're getting to experience that war firsthand, and that's what that's what I think the future games are going to revolve more around that, and it's going to be interesting.
Interesting indeed. Chris, as many people who are longtime listeners of the Game Source podcast know, that like Josh, you are a very ardent Gears of War fan. So I ask you your thoughts on Gears of War 4, and do you think it has a lot of life left in the tank?
Gerald, let me start off by telling you this. Back in 2010 and again in 2013, I have said Gears of War will be Game of the Year every single year it's come out. 2016, it is Game of the Year yet again.
Uncharted 4, I have to respectfully disagree with you on that. But that's for other people to decide. Hopefully we're going to set something up on the Retro City Games Facebook page this year so they can decide and vote for themselves.
Indeed. But as far as the whole Gears of War universe, starting up with a new trilogy, kind of like what Josh said with the Star Wars-esque, continue it in a different set of eyes. I think it's going to be a really good series. Now that it's new writers, new directors, unfortunately Cliffy B is no longer with them to keep on that legacy of what they were doing. They are still making the whole Gears universe exactly the way it should be, nitty and gritty and very like down to the bone, like gut wrenching, but enough of the action and comedy and everything else that goes along with Gears of War to keep it entertaining and keep the Gears fans coming back into a new story instead of watching the same 4 characters go at it again and again and again, which could get quite tiring. Or even if they are different, it's not like, I'm not gonna bash on it, but Call of Duty, where it feels similar every single game. They change enough of the game, adding enough differences to make it feel like a brand new game every time. So I think Gears of War 5 and 6.
I don't think Josh will mind if you bash Call of Duty.
But I don't want to offend anyone else out there that's like, oh, I love Call of Duty. It's different,
No, please go on.
They added jetpacks and this other stuff, and they have a new weapon or two. So all of that is great for Call of Duty fans. For fans of Gears of War, I think they've noticed a bigger difference from Gears of War 1, 2, and 3 to what will be 4, 5, and 6.
Fair enough indeed. Those were some excellent points. But Josh, when it comes to the Gears of War series, do you see... I know Chris and I disagreed at the time Gears of War Judgment came out that it was a wrong move for the series. I personally didn't care for it. I noticed a lot of people did as well. I know it was not made by the same people that were so instrumental in Gears 1, 2, and 3. But when you're talking about having a slip up like that down the road, what can Gears of War, what can they do with the Coalition to prevent such a thing from maybe a title that was, like I said, had such a polarizing effect on people, both good and bad? What can they do to keep the positive vibes that Gears of War 4 is now currently dealing with and now currently having?
Well, they should, don't release a game till it's ready. I think Judgment was it was a cash grab. It wasn't really like a game we're clamoring for. If they just take their time, make the story feel organic. Don't rehash things. Don't put a game out. Don't be like Assassin's Creed, who they learned their lesson this year, but don't put a game out strictly to put a game out. That's really the best advice that I can think of. That people like stories that there's passion in. The Gears of War has layers. That's what I've always loved about it. It's a deep story. It was is sucked you into it. It puts you in the lives of these characters. And let's not talk about Judgment, which actually sold fairly well, but I think nobody realized how bad it was until they actually bought it. But further down the road for Gears 5 and 6, just release them when they're ready. As fans, we will be we'll be mad about the release dates getting pushed back, but in the end, we'll be really grateful for it.
I agree. But the one thing I have to throw in there, Josh, Assassin's Creed isn't coming out with a game this year because of the movie. So let's hope that that's going to be.
Well, I disagree with you on that because I would have thought that a movie tie into a game, not tied into each other maybe on story wise, but maybe the added publicity for the movie, or they could bounce off each other even more successfully and both see a better end on that.
Well, what if the movie wasn't great? Then no one buys the game,
Well,
and it puts a sour taste in the game. Or if the game isn't great, no one goes and watches the movie. Separate them a little bit, you know. I think it works out that way. World of Warcraft was probably one of the only companies that's daring enough to do so, and they pulled it off pretty well, I would say, with the movie and the new expansion. Okay.
You see the eyebrow going up, like
yes. Most general public, I don't think enjoyed the movie as much as some of the gamers. The story really fit in pretty well, and it wasn't anything with the new expansion, but I did enjoy both the game and the movie.
The movie was good, but I felt like they were taking. I see the problems with it, and I see the stuff that really worked for it. Like they had a whole lot of mythology, and they're trying to cram it into 2.5 hours. So, like, if you had never picked up a Warcraft game in your life, you're like, what the heck is going on here? I actually had to Google stuff while I was watching the movie.
But I am somewhat familiar with the Warcraft as far as the game is concerned and the mythos involved. And I thought the movie was a mess. That's my personal thoughts, and I'm sorry. I'm glad I didn't review it for Pop Culture Cosmos yet. But I thought the movie it was just a mess. And obviously a lot of other people felt as I did because the movie tanked here in the U.S. And if it does ever see the light of day, it's because of the huge box office returns from from the Chinese audience that just clamored for it, to the tune of well over $250 million. So obviously, if it does see the light of day, it's because the Chinese audience, they appreciated it much more than American audiences, European audiences, basically the entire world audiences did.
Well, I mean, it's like you said, there was so much they had to throw in. Maybe if they could have, and I'm pretty sure they may make some more, but if they can spread out the lore a little bit more amongst a couple movies, a trilogy maybe, it could work. But they do it all the time. Superman putting into the Man of Steel. Do you throw, his whole life into 1-2 hour movie and you get that? You try to throw in all the orcs and the humans and their backstory, you get that. Now, I liked both of those movies, but that's my personal opinion. Are they great? No, but there's a lot of movies that I like that are just not great. It's your preference on it.
Fair enough. No, and that's like I said, it's to each his own on that. I'm not saying my opinion is the right one, and nor should it be. Just as far as it's just my, we are each entitled to our own opinion. But just when the box office returns came out and you saw such a dismal number for the U.S. and now the series as a whole has been put on hold until they can figure out exactly whether or not how to just really just basically market it towards one audience where it flourished. It seems like the series as a whole has taken like a left turn because of what happened in this movie. So. Let's hope the Gears of War franchise, and Gears of War has been talked about as far as a movie coming to the screen, so it may follow suit indeed, as far as that's concerned. So let's hope that Microsoft will take some of the lessons that Blizzard has learned with Warcraft, and as far as bringing that to the silver screen, and hopefully down the road for some great episodes continuous in the Gears of War franchise, which I believe will happen now that's in the Coalition's hands. Which you have a company similar to 343 that truly loves the franchise that has been created for. I mean, 343 absolutely tries to do its best with Halo. It doesn't always work. I know Halo 5 has its issues, whatnot, but it's not because of a lack of love for the product. It's not because of a lack of interest in the product. It's just because, like I said, sometimes things don't work out. So here's hoping that Gears will not meet the same fate as other franchises gone by.
Agreed.
Agreed, indeed. Yes. Any last thoughts, Josh, on Gears of War before we head to a break?
I think we covered it. Gears of War 4 obviously left us on a cliffhanger, so I'm really anxious to see where they're going and what their timeline's going to be.
3 words: to be continued. Yes, on Scorpio. So
my least favorite word, to be continued.
Yes, but waiting for maybe that's a launch title for Scorpio. Who knows? Probably not, but as a 2018 probably at the earliest. But anyways. But that's, right now, if you have thoughts on the Gears of War franchise, let us know. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com, popculturecosmos on Facebook, and at popculturecosmo on Twitter. When we come back, we're talking some Star Wars, because Rogue One is right around the corner, and we're going to be talking a lot about it this month. And where better to start than with the guys right here talking some Star Wars Rogue One, coming up right after the break. This is the Pop Culture Cosmos. And we're back. This is the Pop Culture Cosmos. My name is Gerald Glassford with Pop Culture Cosmos and Game Source. Thanks again for tuning in on the Podcast Radio Network, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. Also as well, we are on the ESO Network, the Tangent Bound Network, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Podcast.com, our home site, popculturecosmos.wordpress.com, and our newest addition, we want to welcome the GonnaGeek.com, the Gonna Geek Network, GonnaGeek.com, for a lot of great programming there as well. We want to truly just say thank you to all the audio sources that allow us to be on the air and allow us to bring Pop Culture Cosmos to your ears. So I'm back here with Chris Bonner from Game Source and now Pop Culture Cosmos, and the man, the myth, the legend, the author of Vendetta Dark, available now on Amazon.com. It is Josh Peterson, also from Game Source and Pop Culture Cosmos. And we're talking some Star Wars Rogue One. Yeah, it's right around the corner, guys. And it's already meeting a lot of expectations and beating a lot of expectations when it comes to advanced ticket sales. Not exactly surpassing Force Awakens, but as I've said before on previous podcasts, those expectations shouldn't be there. But it is doing quite well indeed, as far as the anticipation, the interest level in it. Guys, and I'll start with you, Josh. Your thoughts on Rogue One, and as far as some of the things that are going on and seeing the trailers, what are you most excited when you're going to about to be ready and going to see Star Wars Rogue One?
That's easy. Donnie Yen. I'm most excited to see Donnie Yen. He looks awesome. Ape Man. I love it.
There you go.
What I'm curious about this movie is that they've never made anything like this. So every Star Wars movie before this was meant to feed into the one in front of it or behind it in the case of the prequels. So what they're doing with this one is they're taking a story that we know happened and they're cramming it all into one movie. So I don't know how they're going to do that, but it looks really good. It looks really dark, and it's Gareth Edwards, the director. He made Monster, and he made The Last Godzilla, and he does a really good job with gritty films. So, and that's what Rogue One looks like, and I think that's what a lot of people I've talked to are kind of turned off by that. But I think it looks really good.
And I know that's what they were going for, but maybe Disney, I heard there was some reshoots because maybe it was looking too gritty and too much like a war movie, but I don't know. That's just hearsay and some rumors and speculation. But, Chris, when it comes to Star Wars Rogue One, what are some of the things that you're looking forward to seeing? And like Josh says, this basically emanates from a 30-second conversation that was had as far as what happened, as far as how these plans or the what's involved with the Death Star. This basically emanates from actually a 2-minute conversation, I should say, in regards to from Star Wars for A New Hope.
I think it's like Josh was saying, it is a nice way that they're getting out of the timeline, and they're kind of like, hey, let's go back and fill in the little gaps that we've missed here, just to kind of fill in a little bit more of the lore and actually confirm what's been happening. You know, a lot of people are doing fan fiction of what, you know, oh, they probably did this, they probably did that. Some of the books may have even tried to explain it, but I know that they can finally now put this in there, and now that it's going to be officially a Star Wars story, that they're going to make sure everyone that watches the movies knows what really happened.
The books in the past 40 years that they completely wiped out.
Exactly, yeah. And since nothing else, you know, matters but the movies apparently now, why not just put it into the movie? You know, Star Wars is automatically, it's like Apple. They put their name on it, they're going to make money. And this is just a good way that they can fill in what we've been missing, but also not just keep it, you know, like pushing out a new movie. Like, oh, let's just fill in, you know, episode 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, where the timeline just like, okay, now we're watching South Park, where 20 years later we're still watching it. And I think that it's good to kind of fill in what we've been missing for the most part.
I couldn't agree with you more on that, and definitely your adage about filling in the gaps was really just right on line with that. Josh, did you have some thoughts to interject as far as the actual mindset for Disney and obviously Lucasfilm when creating something like the Star Wars Rogue One story?
No, I mean, you know, Lucasfilms before, without Disney, you know, they probably wouldn't have done anything. They've been talking about making sequels for years, but they never acted on it. So Disney's kind of, you know, Disney's either a really good thing or a really bad thing for them. But I think what most, you know, fans are eager to learn is, you know, after all these years, why did someone put a giant hole in the Death Star and made it so easy to blow up?
Indeed, as you know, seemed like a no-brainer there. Somebody needs to figure that out, but I'm sure those questions will be answered. You know, and I know Kathleen Kennedy recently said in an interview she's the head of Lucasfilm and responsible for directing the Star Wars franchise as far as from a continuity standpoint. Had discussed that this is going to be a self-containing. There's not going to be a Star Wars Rogue 2. There's not going to be a sequel to it. So my question to you, Chris, is basically having a self-contained story like that, is there going to be something that may be missing from Star Wars Rogue One that you think will not be put in there that you think should be? Is there something that you're going to be looking for? Because we're dealing with something that was relating to something that was filmed back in 1977, so there may be some logistics involved that may not work out for as far as fans wanting to see certain aspects of the Star Wars universe.
I think there's always going to be something missing. Fans are going to be like, well, what about this one little instance where this happened and this happened? We weren't filled that in, you know, and they could have filled that out in 20-30 seconds of filming, but there's never going to be a full satisfaction for the fans. But I think they're going to get enough of it out where, you know, a plot twist, one person was disguised as an engineer and said, hey, we should probably leave that hole open there. And they're like, why? Just do it. Lord Vader said so.
Could
okay,
it be Mads Mikkelsen's character maybe leaving a message?
Maybe it just, you know, it could be anything and especially with Disney running it, it could be humorous in the way it's done, or it could be very serious in the way it's done, or it could be accidental. Who knows? But in every sense that the story is going to be going, they're going to miss something that a fan or fans will eventually say, hey, what about this? They may never go and touch on it again, but at least we can get 99% of what happened filled in, and then they can jump, like you said, they're not going to go to Rogue 2, they're going to do a Han Solo independent movie and a bounty hunter, a Boba Fett, or Boba Fett.
Is that still up in the? Is that still in question? Is that still, because I've heard things over the past, you know, recently about how there was a trailer already made, a teaser, excuse me, and that it's not come to pass.
I don't know. It's from the last time I looked up online, it was on Marvel's website, so I'm assuming it should still be there. But I mean, it could just be in works. You know, like, oh, let's think of what we can do. and that may not come out until 2020 or later.
Fair enough. Josh, did you want to interject something real quick on that? I'm sorry.
Yeah, what if they throw a curveball and it ends up being a Jar Jar Binks movie? I'm just saying, anything's possible.
Or the Battle of the Ewoks. So, I mean,
both ideas. I'm cringing a little.
hey, for merchandising purposes, you gotta merchandise. Disney's got to get that return on the investment there. $4 billion. What can you do? But I could just see someone, they have a picture, all the Imperial forces, all set to as their, final phase of building the Death Star, and one guy in the back of the Imperial, I think I see a problem. And Darth just like giving him the mind choke, just like hush, or whatnot. So
there is no problem in this. This
yes,
is flawless.
Yes. But there is no power greater than that of the Force, according to him as well. So,
True.
but that leads me to another question as far as, so now they're going into a different realm with Disney and Star Wars in creating these alternate films on a every other year basis to alternate, again, using that same word, with the actual continuous Star Wars movies. Josh, do you see that this could really be a good thing, or could it be too much overkill for casual audiences? Not Star Wars fans, psycho Star Wars fans like me, or like, I'll say Jay Bartlett out there, who, as you know, guys have probably seen already that he is a really ardent Star Wars fan, so I want to give him all props for that. Do you see something like happening with casual audiences that there could be too much Star Wars overload?
I don't think so. In theory, yes, but in reality, I don't think so. I think people love it's kind of like Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Everyone is like, are people going to be burnt out of this Harry Potter world by the time 10 years goes by and the last one comes out? No, probably not. Yeah,
we keep saying that with the Marvel franchise. And lo and behold, the Doctor Strange movie comes out, and it does like gangbusters. It is the leading movie, solo superhero Marvel-based movie of all time, correct?
Right, and
debut movie. I'm sorry. So
yeah, and that just goes to show you, with clever writing, like, you can make any old franchise feel new again. That's what they did with The Force Awakens. That was kind of, a lot of people were worried that it was just going to be, in a way, it kind of was a retelling of the old Star Wars movies, but they did it in a way that made it feel fresh and new for new fans and a younger audience. And it just, if the story is handled well, yes, these little like Rogue One and Han Solo, Boba Fett, whatever, they're cash grabs, but if it's handled well, it can really enrich the series.
What are you looking for, Chris, when it comes to these additional series, Han Solo, the possible Boba Fett down the line, and then other stories within that universe? And there's also talk about, as far as Obi-Wan Kenobi with Ewan McGregor possibly taking the role again, or could he be even in Star Wars Episode 8? There's rumors that either or whatnot. So he's talked about now being okay and being on board with doing those type of movies. So where do you see it going forward with these alternate movies in the Star Wars universe?
Shoot. I don't think it's gonna be daunting on us. Like, it's not gonna be too much. I mean, regardless if you're a hardcore Star Wars fan or not, you're going to eventually see them all. Even if you don't see them all right now, it's kind of like the Marvel, the Avengers, and then they put out another Thor movie, and then another Avengers movie, then an Iron Man movie. You can kind of get different stories into them without having to follow the whole timeline 24/7 every single year, every single holiday year especially. But I think that the way Star Wars is doing it, pretty much similar to the way Marvel Avengers are doing it, keeping the timelines there, but just one to another. If fans of old Star Wars just want to see the old Star Wars, they'll go see Rogue One just to get in a little bit more feel of the story. the people that are fans of everything will go see everything. It's gonna fit in pretty well, I think, with having a mix from timeline to let's go back and show a little bit of filler, and then timeline, then a little bit more filler, timeline, then a little more filler. I think that the way that they can, the way they're going to succeed is doing it this way instead of pushing out, a new timeline movie every year or even every other year and then leaving us, 2 years with nothing to do and except wait and hope that the next one's good.
Indeed, I agree with you on that because when you're making these Star Wars films, as far as whether it's a continuous storyline movie or if it's an alternate movie, as far as what we're seeing with Rogue One and the Han Solo one, you're just do it. Their intention is obviously to have that cornerstone franchise that they can count on at the end of every year. And it looks like they're now doing it for the long term, where they're going to have a Marvel movie in May and they're going to have a Star Wars movie in December. And really, it's going to be just that's their plan to going forward to create those and continue those kind of universes. And I think it's for the long term, and it's not exactly targeted for fans like us, people like us, but it is for instance, like my daughters. And also, younger audiences below the age of 18 and whatnot, so that they will truly get into these films and, 20, 30 years down the road, really become such ardent fans and be able to have their kids share the same experiences as well. So it's truly a brilliant marketing plan by Disney. Obviously, I give them great props and applaud them for it. I just see the Star Wars universe continuing and possibly being some burnout. I don't think like you said, Josh, I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of burnout, at least not right away. But it's all telling based on the fact is how good will these movies be as far as from a quality standpoint? How good will they be when they present it on screen? As long as they continue to be really solid, like the Marvel franchise. The Marvel franchise, even when it comes to some of the movies that I didn't like, or some of the movies that you didn't like that we've discussed on a previous podcast in the Marvel universe, they are still solid movies that people can go to and watch and will not leave a sour taste for movies to come. And as long as they continue to do that within the Star Wars universe, I don't see that gravy train ending anytime soon. Is that something maybe you can also ascertain as well, that as possibly, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, as long as people are willing to pay the money to see them, they'll keep making them. And I don't see it as a bad thing that they're releasing a new movie every year. Just look at the way the last before they launched the books out into space, the way they released, they had two new books a month come out. So it's like, people, those sold fairly well. So I mean, if people are willing to spend the money on books, they're definitely gonna be willing to spend the money on movies.
Yes, definitely. And a book like, spending money on books like that, or like Vendetta Dark on Amazon.com would be also great indeed.
But $14.99.
$14.99. There you go. $4.99 on Kindle. Anyways, but it's like I said, we'll wait and see. We're going to have more discussions. At least I am. I know I've got to try and get Jay Bartlett on the show. He is the host of A Galaxy Far, Far Away and also GamerCast. And I know I'm going to get him in an upcoming episode. I'm at least going to try to, because he is the most ardent Star Wars fan out there and that I know of, and to get his thoughts and some other thoughts as well. Anybody that wants to, just give us a shout out at yourgamesource@yahoo.com. Also as well, they can get us on our Pop Culture Cosmos entities. Pop Culture Cosmos at yahoo.com. Pop Culture Cosmos on Facebook, and at Pop Culture Cosmo on Twitter. Just give us a shout out there and tell us your thoughts on the Star Wars universe. Is it too much or not enough? When we come back, we're talking some fantasy. In fact, we're talking some Final Fantasy. What are these guys' thoughts on Final Fantasy 15 There'll be some interesting talking. Pretty good conversation indeed. So we're looking forward to that coming up right after the break. This is the Pop Culture Cosmos. And we're back with Pop Culture Cosmos. Once again, we want to thank you for listening. We are again available 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific on the Podcast Radio Network. Also as well, the ESO Network, esonetwork.com. The Tangent Bound Network, a great lineup of shows on both the ESO Network, the Tangent Bound Network, and Podcast Radio Network, so check all three out. We're also available on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Podcast.com, PopCultureCosmos.wordpress.com, and our newest edition, Gonna Geek Network, the Gonna Geek Network at GonnaGeek.com. So we want to go ahead and just give a shout out to a game that just got released here a little bit ago, and it was something that may be a long time in coming for a lot of Final Fantasy fans. But Final Fantasy 15 has been released upon to the wild, and for some it's a franchise that they can really get behind and get into and delve into. And then there are some others that may not have such endearing thoughts on the franchise because from a continuative narrative, it has really seen some issues and really seen some kind of all over the place. I'm going to be honest with you. My opinion on the Final Fantasy series is just the narrative there, similar to Assassin's Creed, has been all over the place. But I know it does have its fans. I know one of them is right here at least, and that's going to be Josh, who I know is a big ardent fan and got Final Fantasy 15. And I'm going to say Chris has a lot of respect too, but I'll hear his thoughts. So Chris, I'll start with you. Do you have a love for the Final Fantasy franchise? But if you don't, what has kept you away from it? And what are your thoughts on Final Fantasy 15 right now?
So with with Final Fantasy, I was never a big fan. To be honest, I the first one I played was back in, I want to say it was high school. And my friend was like, "Hey, there's one I have on PS2. I'll let you borrow it and see if you like it." I'm like, "Sure, whatever." It was Final Fantasy VII, which everyone's probably gonna hate me for that, but everyone was like, "Oh my God, that was the best one," or at least
the Holy Grail of Final Fantasy.
The Holy Grail. And I got it. I took it home. I played it that night, and I brought it back the next day, and I was like, "Nah, not my type of game." And he was like, "What? What? Are you serious?" And I just couldn't get into it. It wasn't my type of thing. I wasn't into turn-based strategy. It wasn't my thing. But since then, I admit I have made a little bit of a turnaround. I am a little bit more RPG sensed. I played Final Fantasy 13 and I played it quite a bit, and that one actually was really fun for my style of gameplay. And the artwork was just amazing. That's the way that Square Enix uses their wait. Yeah, they use their own engine for that one, I believe, right? If I'm not mistaken, that's what I'm trying to make sure of. The way they use their
I believe so. I believe they did. I don't think they used the Unreal Engine on that one.
No. I know it's not Unreal, but the way that it's been, I'll just double check in a little bit, but the way that it's been graphically has really appealed to me, and I like that they really go for this artsy feel with a good story, and every story is different. So even if I haven't played 1 through 12 or 1 through 11, they're really not going to change much. So 13 was brand new to me, and new story, new people. I got into it. 15, I really want to get into as well. Haven't picked it up yet, unfortunately. I'm still backlogged on a bunch of other games, Gears of War and Skyrim Ultimate Edition, all this other stuff, or all these other new games that have been coming out. I really want to get into this because it looks great. I do also like the Kingdom Hearts series, which they kind of play off of each other a little bit. Or at least the Kingdom Hearts plays off of Final Fantasy series with some of the characters. And I kind of want to know a little bit more about their stories, I would say. And this new story just looks even more amazing. The graphics, the way 2016 has accompanied with graphics, it's beautiful. So I would love to, play it when I get the chance, though.
And maybe with the refreshed Final Fantasy VII coming hopefully sooner rather than later to PlayStation 4 owners, maybe that'll give you a brand new perspective on a game that you didn't like so long ago. So
Perhaps, yeah.
Perhaps that would be a great game to put on as a PlayStation, free game for PlayStation Plus owners. But that's just my hopes. I know it won't happen anytime soon, but just asking. Anyways, Josh, I know you had talked about previously about Final Fantasy 15 being in your future, and as someone who is a good fan of the series, what are your hopes and thoughts as you approach the game itself?
I'm about 2 chapters into it right now, and so far it's completely blown away my expectations. Like I was, like with the previous entries, I've kind of had expectations of, like, I was always comparing it to Final Fantasy VII, but then I kind of realized that there's never going to be another game like that until the remake comes out, obviously. But with this game, I didn't have any expectations. I kind of went into it. The video, all the Kingsglaive, the prequel movie to it, it was really good. It pulled you in, left you on a cliffhanger, and it literally picks up right where the game starts. So it's and they did a really good job. It's a beautiful game, and after playing Skyrim and dealing with glitches for 213 hours, it's a nice change of pace. But what I like about it is that they kind of in 13 they kind of experimented with the active battle system. You didn't have to go into a new screen to fight, but you still had the little like options of attack, magic, defend. They kind of perfected that system, so now it's kind of like Devil May Cry, where you can just run into a fight and you can just swing your sword around, and you don't have to worry about what everyone else is doing. They're just going to keep attacking, but you can chain your attacks to their attacks, so it's all one fluid thing, and you don't have to. There's no more separate battle screens. It's all. And if you're doing something like wrong in the fight, your teammates will talk to you and say, "Hey, let's do this." So you're like, "Okay," you just press the button to do it, and the game. It almost plays itself. Obviously, you still have to swing the sword around, but it's great. And the way that it looks so real. Looks everything shines, everything's bright. When your clothes are wet, when you go into the menu, your clothes are wet, and so far the story's been really good. I've read a few negative reviews on the story, but I have a feeling that's from people who didn't really know what to expect from Final Fantasy. But it's definitely, so far, it's surpassed my expectations.
That's great to hear. So what I ask now, Chris, is hearing that from Josh and hearing that you might have some interest in picking up the title, where do you see the Final Fantasy series go from here now that 15 is out? Because the Final Fantasy series as a whole has just gone all over the place, and it's taken pretty much 6 years since the last release of the last major Final Fantasy game in the series. So do you see another 6-year period waiting, or do you see something now a little bit more formulated that they will go ahead and start releasing out on a regular basis?
Well, already with the way Square Enix works, or at least they seem to have been working, is they do push out their games a little bit later than the traditional Call of Duty, Assassin's Creed, Battlefields once a year.
Kingdom Hearts is a great example.
There we go. Kingdom Hearts has even been waiting longer, probably nearly 10, no, more than that, 10 years or so. More than 10 because it was PS2.
Guardian, yes.
Yeah, for real. And the minus the 1.5 and the 2.5 remakes, which were very beautiful as well. The way that I feel that they're going to start going about the new Final Fantasies to keep them 3 to 6 years apart from each other gives them the time that they need to make, the drastic changes in the way gamers are now. Gamers want better graphics, they want better gameplay, they want better story, and they just want a better game in general. If they keep pushing out a new game every year, tweaking one or two things, we might as well, give it to EA and say, hey, this is like new Madden. Give it a couple tweaks. So I think that if they keep it up where they're, pushing it out later, it'll give
call it
fans
Final Fantasy.
call Final Fantasy, Final Fantasy 2016, Final Fantasy 2017, and but if they keep them spread out enough, the fans are going to continuously play them throughout the years, just so that way they get used to it and love it. Then by the time technology outdates that game, which is really hard because even Final Fantasy 13 still looks pretty good to today's standards, but with the way 15 is, by the time they come out with 16 or whatever they're going to call the next one, I'm sure the technology will already be there where 4K gaming, 3D without glasses, maybe on your TV, whatever it may be, that's the big next thing. They will have that technology in Final Fantasy 16. And the next big thing in 17, next big thing in 18.
Well, let's hope so indeed. It is a beautiful game. And if anybody has not seen the footage yet, they need to check out the trailers or they need to check out game footage on Twitch and what have you, because it is definitely a beautiful game indeed. Josh, before we head on out, your thoughts again on Final Fantasy 15 as far as maybe continuing the series in a positive direction, because after Final Fantasy 7, you got to admit there's been some highs and lows for that series as far as decisions that were made, as far as what they were doing, where they're going, and where the series now seems to hopefully be going from here. Josh, you there? Chris, did I lose you?
Yeah.
Am I losing you guys? Okay. Chris, do we have you? I'm freezing. Oh my gosh. Hopefully it's not my internet. You guys back on? Just let me know. When you get.
I can, Gerald. You're coming through very snappy.
Just let me know when you're back on, though.
And Josh, I don't know if you're doing anything.
Didn't hear you guys playing robot though.
Okay. I'll give it another couple seconds. Otherwise, we'll just close it out. So I sound like a robot. Still cutting out? Yeah, you guys are still cutting out. All right. Well, I know. Will it sound normal? Indeed. Okay. Well,
Oh, damn, this sounds so funny.
all right. Well, then let's close it out then. Guys, it's been some great thoughts indeed in regards to the Final Fantasy series, and here's hoping Final Fantasy 15 reaches the level of success it deserves. The positive outlook that, for the most part, that have been presented on it, the reviews have been very solid indeed. Let's hoping the Final Fantasy series continues its a positive trend, because in my opinion it's been all over the place, which for some fans it's really hard to follow, but for others it's part of the lure of Final Fantasy. So here's hoping that Final Fantasy 15 will attract a large crowd and a large gaming basis here in the US and Europe and abroad, like it has already in Japan for so many years. And let's hope the Final Fantasy series will continue to see the same success down the road with each successive new entry in the franchise. So that's going to do it for us here on the Pop Culture Cosmos. We truly appreciate you listening as part of the Pop Culture Cosmos scene. Looks like I might have you guys back. No, I don't.
Dude.
Is it okay now?
Can you hear us?
I can hear you briefly, but you're still cutting out. There you go. Now
I can hear everyone perfectly.
Now your guys are going at 10 frames per second, but at least I can hear you.
How's this? Are we back?
It sounds like we're
Do I
back.
sound like T-Pain?
There you go.
No, you don't sound like T-Pain.
Okay. Well, well, fair enough. Let's close this
Sadly,
thing
no.
out then. So, Josh, your final thoughts on the Final Fantasy series and where it's going from there?
My final thoughts are I would definitely recommend picking it up if you're a new fan, if you're an old fan, it's a great play. And you know, as for where it's gonna go from here, that I think that if they would like make people know, do a better job letting people know that these games aren't continuations of each other, then they'd probably be, you know, more avid Final Fantasy players. But as for where it's going, it could go anywhere. That's the great thing about Final Fantasy is that their stories are so random, but they're still so captivating. So, you know, here's to hoping they focus less on like, you know, little Final Fantasy Agito or, you know, 13.2, 13.3, and more on the main entries in the franchise.
Couldn't agree with you more on that. That's definitely a look towards the future. So here's hoping that the Final Fantasy series, with the release of Final Fantasy 15, sees plenty of success here, not only stateside but all the world over, and that the Final Fantasy series can actually continue to be so enjoyable for gamers out there. So, guys, any last thoughts on what you're doing and what you're up to with all that's out there? What you're up to? I know, Josh, you got some projects going on, but I'll start with you, Chris. Chris, what you got on the plate right now?
All right, so a little advice for people out there in the world with video games, at least right now. One, get Gears of War 4. Two, get the Xbox One S with Gears of War 4. Three, not to bash, but the PS4 Pro doesn't look like anything big, so go with the Xbox One S with Gears of War 4, preferably the Gears of War 4 edition. Other than that, I think just enjoy your holiday season and you know, have a good holiday pickup games that you want. The biggest thing here is, you know, we're expressing our opinions of what we like and what we don't like, but there are so many other games that are out there right now, and especially during the holiday season, you know, they push out a new game every week. If you're a Pokemon fan, 2 new Pokemon games have come out. RPG fans have Skyrim and Fallout for this year. I mean, there are so many things out there. So I really recommend just getting out there and getting a new game this year, or 2 or 3 or 4. But, you know, pick your favorites and go from there. And please let us know what you think of some of them, or if you didn't like my opinions on some things, then you know, I don't care. But just let me know.
Hey, couldn't have said it better myself. So, but we do care what you guys think that are out there, you guys and gals that are out there. So, if you want to give us a shout out again at Pop Culture Cosmos on Twitter, Pop Culture Cosmos on Facebook, and Pop Culture Cosmo on Twitter, and popculturecosmos at yahoo.com. Josh, any last thoughts before we head on out?
I mean, I agree with what you guys said. Obviously, you know, our opinions aren't going to be what everyone else thinks. So there's a lot of good stuff out there to try that we might not necessarily like, but you guys might like it. Other than that, I just, you know, pick up Vendetta Dark, $14.99, Amazon.com, Barnes and Noble, and Ghost Toasters Episode 3 is coming soon. So more on that soon.
Great, looking forward to it.
Yeah, I hear Vendetta Dark is Vendetta Dark's like the perfect stocking stuffer or something like that. It was rated on like Forbes magazine or something. I don't remember. Don't take my word for it, but it probably was. Just, you know,
It was
Oprah
actually
may
designed
one
to
day
fit
say,
into stockings. So, you know,
there you go. And one day Oprah may say, "Hey, you need this book because, you know, it's amazing. So might as well get it now before, you know, the hype is there. That way you know already and you're not spoiled." Just saying.
Just saying, indeed.
this is true. It's good to be prepared.
Well, I did
Exactly.
mention it. I did mention on the latest ESO podcast as far as it being a gift that a lot of people would enjoy having. So, again, we truly appreciate you listening. For everyone out there, we truly thank you for being a part of the pop culture cosmos. It's a beautiful day in paradise here in the pop culture cosmos. And here's hoping you have yourself a great day.